Actually, I'm filling in. I hadn't changed the schedule since Reverend Johnson has resigned and left the Christian church. And then I got a call today that said Gail Cross must be filling in at the church there, but he's still unable tonight. But he'll be here in 2 weeks to give you the prayer. But the word that comes to my mind and has since I came in from my house was the smartest man that lived on the face of the earth, and the wisest man at that, gives us the Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, where, and if I probably will stumble over it now, because now it just left my mind. Lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. It also, in Proverbs 1, it gives allusion to, if you want to be a wise man, you should seek wise counsel, and there's nobody wiser than God. And he made Solomon the wisest man on this earth, and there hasn't been anybody wiser since then. And the Bible still has the greatest wisdom that we can ever delve into to guide us through our lives. And the nation that was open and sought the wisdom of the Lord is the nation that prospered. And that can happen in cities too. It's for those who turn their backs on God that start to fall away and fall down. Shall we pray? Father, what a day. As the month of May is bringing new life with the springtime, the grass green, the trees, the flowers, the sun appearing more, and a whole new energy in life as a whole because of the atmosphere that is around. We still take time to find and seek the best route of business for the city. And we ask, Lord, that you help us, make us wise and diligent in the decisions that need to be made, so that above all else, you can be glorified and your name be lifted up. Father, we ask this in your precious name.
Tuesday, May the 7th, 2013, 7:30 p.m. All agenda items are for discussion and action will be taken as deemed appropriate. City Council reserves the right to go into executive session in accordance with Section 84-1410. Item A, call to order. Pursuant to Section 84-14128 of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the entry of this meeting room and is available for viewing by the public. Item number 2, roll call.
Doug Brown.
Here.
Rick Carmichael.
Here.
Roger Bailey.
Present.
Tim Olson. Bill Robbie. Ed Friesen.
Present.
Brad Kazelka.
Here.
Kelly Davis.
Here. Item B, submittal requests for future items. Individuals who have appropriate items for City Council consideration should complete the request for future agenda items form located near the entrance of the meeting room. If the issue can be handled administratively without council action, notifications will be provided. If the item is scheduled for a committee or council meeting, notice of the date will be given. Item C, consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 16, 2013. Item number 2, approval of the claims. Item number 3, approval of the resignation of Bruce Banahan and Danielle Pacento for the volunteer fire department. Approval of the resignation of Kim Allen from the Citizens Advisory Review Committee. Item number 5, approval of the resignation of James Headley from the Museum Board. Item number 6, approval of the resignation of Paley Sim from the Museum Board.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. They moved and seconded we approve the consent agenda. Please cast your votes. Olson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Lodge, Friesen, Kazelka, Davis, all voting yes, motion carried. Item D, public hearings. Item number 1, public hearing concerning the issue of $115,232 of LB 840 local option sales tax funds to the city of Faibury as a public works grant. for a project consisting of making vital public work streets improvement on East Street between 11th and 13th and 80th Street. This is the main north-south street which moves traffic from Highway 136 to Faibury's downtown district. Okay, I'll open this hearing.
Go ahead, Laura.
Well, you basically said it. This is to commit LB 840 funds to a project on East Street from 11th, it's 120 feet south of 12th Street up to 13th Street to remove and replace the brick and the concrete along there. Leave it out. Any questions?
That consists of the drive lane on between 13th and 12th.
Yes, there's a couple spots where Mick's going to go beyond that, I believe, and do a little bit of repair, but basically just the drive lane through there. There was some sidewalks discussed, some ADA that we may do as a project outside of what the LD 840 pays for. This is just for what the LD 840 would fund.
Questions, comments? Hearing none, I declare this hearing closed. Item number 2, public hearing concerning the use of $36,496 of LD 840 local option sales tax funds in the city of Faibury as a public works grant for a project consisting of making vital public work streets improvements on 3rd Street between 8 and half of 3rd Street is an existing corridor near the downtown commercial district. I declare this hearing open.
This is done. We'd like to pay for it. This is the 3rd Street project. We needed to do this right away. It was falling pretty badly. The guys just finished up today. So they're gonna leave a little bit of sand on it. I think they may have pulled the barricades today. Might be driving over it, if not, you'll be driving over it by tomorrow. And again, this is just to set aside LD 840 funds to pay for that portion, that project.
Now, Laura, that was just the curb and gutter and the brick, correct?
Curb and gutter and
Because I
brick.
noticed there were some driveways that were being done. Was that at
Yes.
the owner's expense?
That was at the owner's expense, and that's a nice benefit to this, is I oftentimes see when we do the street, the adjacent property owners will make improvements at that same time, because it's a little bit cheaper because the companies have been mobilized to that spot. So I think it's a nice way to utilize that money, that funding.
I was impressed how quick it went.
I was too. I was very impressed. I thought with the weather and everything else, it was going to take a lot longer. That brick is not easy to do. It was a long time. This is to apply the funding for it. And we knew that street needed to be done. There's only certain streets that LB 840 can pay for. It has to be in direct relation to a business or to business districts. And so when Sin writes these applications up, and maybe the LB 840 committee would be better explaining this, but my understanding is when Sin writes these applications up, just like a business comes and applies for a storefront, LB 840 or whatever else, it has to directly relate to the business in that district. We knew that street needed to be done. We also have other streets that need to be done that are outside of the scope of LB 840 funding. So in effort to utilize some of our revenue on those other streets, we wanted to use LB 840 to pay for this portion of the street. But that being said, we knew we needed to do that street right away because it was falling so quickly.
My question is why we have a public hearing for after work. We can plan on paying for that along with
If LB 840, if this hearing doesn't go through and the council decides not to have LB 840 pay for it, we'll pay for it out of street profit, street revenue. Does that answer? But we're hoping to use that on other streets.
Other comments, questions?
I'd make one other comment. Stan, I'm on the LBA 40 committee, and I've been working with Laura and Mick on all these projects. And when we originally started with the East Street project, was going to be our #1 priority. And then our number 2 priority was going to be the what's coming up next, which is another part of 3rd Street. And then as we got to looking at the time, it moved a little quicker. We noticed that we probably needed to do something with that small section of 3rd Street immediately. Lotmans were available to do it. They had the low bid or close to the low bid, and they were available to start right away before we could even meet as a committee. However, we'd already talked about this for several months as a committee about committing funds for street projects. When the original inception of the LBA 40 fund was started in 2010, we originally committed 50% of the fund for street improvements. And to date, we've done, not counting these projects that we're bringing up, a total of about $19,000 worth of projects out of around, I'm going to say, $277,000 that we should have had allocated for street projects. So, with that being said, I kind of pushed the committee a little bit because I thought we ought to start doing some streets rather than funneling. All the money's been funneled into business advancement, which is not a bad thing, but I felt like that maybe we were letting the taxpayers and the voters down, because that was one of the things that they voted on was, if we were going to approve this, we wanted 50% of the money used for infrastructure of some type. The state says it has to be allocated for business, so that's what we're trying to do right now with that. So,
The comments. I declare this hearing closed. Item number 3, public hearing concerning the use of $121,480 of LD 840 local option sales tax funds to the city of Faibury as a public works grant for a project consisting of making vital public works street improvements on 3rd Street between F and H. 3rd Street is an existing corridor of the downtown commercial district. Declare this hearing open.
Same thing, different street. We are moving down 3rd Street, and we'll go to H. There's a few sections that were done, and the outside edges, so again, we're just doing the drive lanes on this one. There's a couple sections, I think 2 or 3 sections in 3rd Street that were done. I'm not quite sure how we're gonna do that. This one will be bid out too, so. Just the drive lanes down to H.
it's my understanding from visiting with Mick that if there are some areas outside of the drive lanes that are going to be done, that the city is going to pay for that portion of it out of the street budget.
And there is a little bit of the intersection, of one of the intersections on this page.
Other questions, concerns? I declare this hearing closed.
Thank you.
Item number 4, set a public hearing concerning the obligation of further funding into the downtown design challenge grant for economic development LDA 40 program. Set the hearing for May 21st.
Motion to set that hearing?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, we set the public hearing for the challenge grant economic development funds on May 21st. Discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion made by Carmichael, Brown, Rod, and Friesen, Kazalka, Davis, all voting yes. Motion carried. Item number 5, set public hearing concerning proprietary budget and budget summary for the city of Faibury, the utilities for May 1, 2013 to May 30, 2014. I'd like to set that hearing on May 21st.
Motion to set the date for the budget hearing, May 21st.
And moved and seconded that we set the proprietary budget for summary for utilities on May 21st. Please cast your vote. Olson, Davis, Carmichael, Brown, Rod, and Friesen, Kazalka, Davis, voting yes. Motion carried. Item E, current business. Consider Donald Schroeder's property, citywide housing rehabilitation program.
I can address this briefly. This agenda item deals with another home that was part of the citywide housing rehabilitation program, and SEND administers that program. These are CDBG grant dollars from HUD that come to the state, that come to local communities, and if a residence qualifies for this program, then there is basically a provisional grant given to the person to make improvements to the home, and this is one of those recipients. The terms are, if the person lives in the home and doesn't sell it for, I think it's 10 years, then that loan becomes a grant and is forgiven. And if they do sell or otherwise dispose of the home before that time, then a prorated amount can be owed back to the program. In this case, I think the individual passed away 2 years into that repayment schedule or proration schedule, so the home is now being resold to another buyer, and the request has been made that the city release its deed of trust on this property, that the city holds a deed of trust to cover the amount of funds that were given from that program for these improvements. And the way this works is these generally are, they fall generally not first in line as far as a lien. I think the bank had the first lien, there are at least 2 or 3 other liens on the property or deeds of trust, and so the city is well down the list of deeds of trust and or liens or interest in the property. And I talked with SEND today, and that's not unusual, that's kind of by design by the program. There's no HUD regulations that say that they have to check the title or make sure that the city, or this program really, it's not city funds, it's HUD dollars, that this program comes first in the line. And so even if we were to not release the deed of trust, the city would not get paid any dollars back because it's like fourth in line. And when I say the city, I mean the program. These aren't city dollars anyway, it's the program dollars that come from HUD through the city. So my recommendation would be to go ahead and approve releasing that deed of trust and let that closing go forward.
Entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we release the deed of trust on the Darrell Schroeder property. Any other discussion? Cast a vote. Olson, Carmichael, Brown, Rogers, Friesen, Zelton, Davis voting yes, Bailey voting no. Motion carried. Item F, resolutions and ordinances. Item number 1, resolution number 897 to levy and assess costs of a nuisance abatements on certain properties.
You want to expound on this, Joe?
Yes, sir. This is the property that had several governmental units involved in it. The house that was there is no longer there. Thus, the $9,250 lien. What had happened was Cliff and Debbie Tracy had this house. It was set to be torn down by the city as a nuisance. Blue Valley stepped in and offered to help by removing asbestos from that property. I believe the cost of that assistance was probably in about the $4,000 range, if not more. I'm not sure exactly what that number was. But Blue Valley removed the asbestos. The city tore the building down. At some point, a new building or a new something is going to end up on that property, and it looked like a good proposition for everybody. since the house had to be torn down at any rate. We got through it cheaper than we thought we could, and hopefully, some construction of some kind will go up on that property in a future date. I don't know if there's any ideas out there right now how that's gonna happen. What we have to do to kind of finish this thing off is we have to apply a lien against the property so that later on we can release the lien against the property when a project comes up. That's where we're at.
Motion to adopt resolution number 897.
Second.
We moved and seconded, we adopt resolution number 897. Please cast your vote.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to abstain from that vote.
Olson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Rogers, Friesen, Kazow, voting yes, Davis, abstaining, motion carried. Item number 2, resolution number 898, obligating LD 840 funds for the public works grant in the amount of $115,232 to the city of Faibury from the city of Faibury East Street between 11th and 13th Street projects.
Motion to adopt resolution.
Second.
We moved and seconded, we adopt resolution 898 for the LD 840 funds for the East Street project. Any discussion? Please cast your vote. Wilson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Rogers, Friesen, Kazow, Davis, all voting yes, motion carried. Item number 3, resolution number 899, obligating LD 840 funds for the public works grant in the amount of $46,496 to the city of Faibury for the 3rd Street project between E and F.
Motion to adopt resolution number 899.
Second.
We moved and seconded, we adopt resolution number 899. Discussion? Please cast your vote. Olson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Rogers, Friesen, Kazow, Davis, voting yes, motion carried. Item number 4, resolution number 900, obligating LD 840 funds for the public works grant in the amount of $121,480 to the city of Faibury, for the city of Faibury, 3rd Street.
I make most we adopt resolution number 900.
Second. We have moved and seconded to approve resolution number 900. Discussion? Please cast your vote. Olson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Rogers, Friesen, Kazow, Davis, voting yes, motion carried. Item number 5, resolution number 901, transferring LD 840 funds in the amount of $151,728 from the other 3 LD 840 funds, land acquisition, building construction, business recruitment, and development administration to the infrastructure fund.
I move we approve resolution 901. Second.
We moved and seconded, we adopt resolution number 901. Discussion? Please cast your vote. Olson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Rogers, Friesen, Kazow, Davis, voting yes, motion carried. Item number 6, second reading of ordinance number 3030, an ordinance of the city of Faibury, Nebraska to approve and adopt the zoning and subdivision ordinance for the city of Faibury, Nebraska by reference including the area within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Faibury, Nebraska.
Motion to adopt for the second reading of ordinance 3030.
Second.
Motion to second to give ordinance number 3030 the second reading. Any discussion? Please cast your vote.
Hold it. Mr. Trim, are you here to say anything about this?
About that,
It concerns your property, so I
Right.
thought that's why you might be here, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk.
So my understanding is the property I own on E Street, you want to switch from permitted use to, you have to get a, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Copy of the law.
It's got to
Special
be,
use.
the conditional use and versus the permitted, and that's going to change my properties from this already permitted to conditional. And I was kind of wondering why this is going on, because all these businesses are on that street, and actually some of them need to be switched to permitted from the conditional use. That, for instance, I'm trying to sell a liquor store, and if this passes, I'm going to have to get, or whoever, going to have to get a permit every year, or it's going to have to be looked at every year. So I don't understand why this is changing.
This is part of the overall plan. Can you explain it to me more, why it was done that way?
I can try to. A couple of things, and we've been working on this for about 2 years now, just to clarify for everybody. And we've had hearings at P&Z and at council and town halls and everything else, so as you all are aware. We've already passed the comprehensive plan, okay? And just because this is a very difficult plan to understand, I just want to clarify. The comprehensive plan kind of sets the outline for what the city wants to do over the next 10, 15, 20 years, okay? And it's these broad, grandiose plans. To put that into effect, so first we put that out to you guys and say, is this generally what we want to do? When P&Z looks at this, they first look at the comprehensive plan. And there are certain sections of the comprehensive plan that deal directly with land use in specific areas of the city. And so we agree to the comprehensive plan and say, yes, we like that. That's what we wanted. That's the vision we have for our city over the next few years. And then we set that aside. And we say, okay, now how are we going to make this work? How are we going to enforce this? How are we going to get, citizens on board? How are we going to make these changes happen? Well, within the second part of the comprehensive plan is the zoning and subdivision regulations. And as with anything, to make things happen, you tend to have regulations that enforce certain things. The zoning and subdivision regulations are what enforce practices that we want to see happen in the comprehensive plan. And as I said, these plans actually come through separately at P&Z, and they also come through separately at council. It's intended for that reason, or in that manner. It's intended that the comprehensive plan be passed first. At a planning and zoning level, first we write the comprehensive plan, then we write zoning and subdivision to back up the comprehensive plan, then we go back to the comprehensive plan and look at that to make sure that our zoning and subdivision are actually backing up what we have written in the comprehensive plan. And then we present it to council, council then votes on the comprehensive plan, and then votes on the zoning and subdivision regulations. In the comprehensive plan, in chapter 4 and 5, it talks about our goals and objectives for the city of Faibury over the next, again, 10, 15, 20 years. It talks a lot about land use. It talks about mixing flex use districts together. The intent, as I described at the last meeting, the intent of the flex use district is so that commercial properties and residential properties can be in the same district together. And with that in mind, like I say, it speaks to it specifically in here at 2.1, commercial and residential development should be allowed to mix together within a special land use definition, flex. It talks about encouraging certain more commercial districts into more commercial areas. Specific things like that, you can read through that portion of the plan if you so choose, or if you want me to read more out of it, I can. What that brings up then is the second portion of this is the zoning. And when we go to zoning, we're talking about two different districts. We're talking about a flex district, which we call the RCF district. And on each of these zoning districts, there's a little blurb at the top that explains what that district is supposed to be. The RCF district is defined as, this district is intended to provide an area within the community where existing residential and commercial uses can continue to coexist along major highways and thoroughfares in the community. If you go to the other district that your district was previously, which would be essentially the C2 or general commercial district, this district accommodates a variety of commercial offices and services uses in Faibury's commercial areas outside of the town center. The uses and development in the C2 district may develop substantial traffic, creating potential land use conflicts with adjacent residential areas, requiring provisions of adequate buffering. This district is most appropriately located along major arterial streets or in areas that can adequately be buffered from residential districts. These are districts that are larger, that can be pulled off of the road or pulled away from the residential properties that are in close proximity. In answer to your specific property, I've looked at a couple of things in light of our discussion last time. I just wanted you guys to be aware of a couple things in that district. The RCF district, again, is to allow commercial and residential properties to mix with some oversight. And that was intentional by planning and zoning. They wanted to allow for broader uses in districts. They wanted business owners to be more creative with what they could do in districts, but they wanted some oversight on that. They didn't want to allow just anything to come into certain districts, especially the corridor districts. That was intentional on their part, and there's even a little section in land use on corridor districts, because they wanted some oversight in that. They thought that the beautification of our community was important. So what they did is allow for a lot of things to be conditional use, and currently your property is a conditional use, so when you put your storage units on there, remember you had to go to planning and zoning, it was called special use, it's now called conditional use. Don't ask me why, that's a semantics change. But it's the same thing. You had to go get a special use permit currently to put something on there, and that's, essentially what it would be. And I think we actually wrote both buildings, I guess we should be clear on that, we wrote both buildings into that permit, or at least they were both mentioned at that special use permit, and that would be important in the future. We'll have to check to make sure on that. But it is important to note that things like the liquor store could be sold as a liquor store, and it would be a continuing use in that district, okay? So you would not need to get a new special use permit. It would be a continuing use. Anything that is currently established as a use would continue on as a use. However, if you wanted to sell the liquor store and make it a small appliance repair shop, that would require a conditional use permit, because that would be a new use. And so I just kind of went through a few things, and it was intentional on the part of the planning and zoning to separate certain things out of that district, or to at least require certain things to have some oversight. For instance, a small appliance and repair shop would be a permitted use in a general use district. So nobody would have to have any oversight on it. It could move in, you could start repairing lawnmowers at that site. Currently, it would be a conditional use permit. If this passes, it would be a conditional use permit. A bar, if you wanted to open a bar in that district, it would be under, if this passes, it would be under a conditional use permit. If it were changed to a C2, that would then become a permitted use, so they could just move in and open it. And there are things like a billiards hall, building material dealers, department stores, lawn and garden equipment services, piercing and tattoo studios. These are just some things that they pushed into the more commercial districts. A lot of it has to do with the amount of traffic that is drawn by these businesses, or the hours of traffic that these businesses would draw customers. We're not trying to push anybody in or out of a district per se that's existing there now, but they are trying to have some oversight in these corridor districts on what may come in. That's the intent behind it, but I appreciate you coming here and asking that question. It's a hard one to talk about.
So in other words, if he sold his liquor store and somebody come in and wanted to run it as a liquor store, they would not need any permit.
Yeah. Same way with your existing, yeah,
Storage units,
your
yeah.
storage unit is currently a special use permit, so it does get reviewed. It currently gets reviewed yearly. In fact, it currently gets reviewed twice a year, but we've knocked that off because that's just too much.
What about like Bedlands across the street, those other Teal Haas?
Yes, if Bedland's sold as a gun store, they could continue as a gun store. If Teal Haas sold as a gun store, they would have to get a special use permit. Because they're changing, the change of occupancy is what would require the special use permit. Do you want to talk about existing non-conforming uses?
Yeah. Fairly recent Nebraska case law establishes that as a property right. So if you have a current business like your liquor store and you go to sell it, it's not so much what you sell it as what the buyer wants to do with it. So you can sell it, you could agree with the buyer that you're going to sell it as a liquor store, and they say, okay, I want to keep it as a liquor store, great, transaction occurs. Now, if that new buyer continues that as a liquor store, they don't have to get a special use permit or conditional permit. If they want to change it to something else, then they would have to. So, in that respect, if it were not that way, there might be a run on the bank, so to speak, where people try and get rid of their properties before zoning changes. But what the courts say is, whatever you're using it for currently becomes what's called a prior non-conforming use. That is your right to continue to do that, as long as you don't expand the business, you don't expand the non-conforming aspects of it, and the council has the right to put a sunset provision on all of those non-conforming uses if they wanted to. There's a particular formula and statute you have to follow, make sure that the owner has some reasonable chance to get the value of that business out of that use before they can do that. But just as a general proposition, the change in zoning does not change your immediate use of the property and doesn't change what the next person may do with it. If you sell it and they buy it as the same kind of business.
Okay. Thank you.
As I think about the area from like 12th Street to 15th Street, I think of one residence in there, and I deem the rest of those properties commercial properties. It makes more sense in my mind that be commercial instead of flex, with the amount of businesses that are located there.
How many residents?
One, I think of one house.
Well, one house, two houses. Isn't there? Are you talking from 12 to 12 houses?
Yeah, there's a house right north of the church.
Of course, has his residence, looking at that ownership.
Yeah, okay. There's still quite, I guess what I'm saying is there's more commercial properties than there is
Oh,
residential.
absolutely, yeah.
Almost makes more. What's that?
I think it's because of the corridors.
Yeah, it's mostly, the intent was mostly because of the corridor, and they wanted oversight on that, and then also because of the residential properties on the other side of the alley. That was a concern.
Mr. Morgan was saying that they can't expand their business. Say, the Bedlands wants to build another parts of their store and have more inventory and stuff. Now we can't do that as a flex, whether they have to have a permit to do that.
Potentially. I mean, if you, the way the cases and some of the regulations worded is if you expand or increase the non-conforming aspects of the non-conformity. So whether you increase the size of it or if you in some manner would change the degree to which it is no longer conforming, then you may have to bump up and meet the new regulation, the new provisions. But as long as it's continued as that same kind of business in the same manner, then that can continue until such time as the council, if it does, puts a sunset provision on those uses. And as far as the what you want to do in the future with those zones, that's completely a policy matter and up to how you want to plan the future. And so sometimes what councils want to do or communities is they want to shift the use years and years down the future, but they want to get the process started by changing the comp plan, which is a long range, like you say, 20, 30 years out. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the uses will change immediately, or even in the near future. It might take several years for that to happen.
So let me read this part about nonconformity, and this is confusing for, everybody, but this is nonconforming structures, okay? Enlargement, repair, alterations. Any such structure described in 1701 may be enlarged, maintained, repaired, or remodeled, provided, however, that no such enlargement, maintenance, repair, or remodeling shall either create any additional nonconformity or increase the degree of existing nonconformity. So, I know it's terribly confusing.
Are we all conform now? Or?
Yeah. But it does say, Dave, I will point out, it does say, may enlarge, maintain, repair, or remodel, provided, however, it does not increase. My planner and I contend that allows them to enlarge as long as they're not increasing the nonconformity. So they should be able to enlarge the existing business as long as it's not increasing the nonconformity. And now Dave Bargan and I are going to argue for a minute.
Well, we talked one time, probably a couple years ago, about this, that perhaps the way, it's badly worded for one, but the way you read that is that you can conform up but not out. I mean, it would come down to a judgment call as to what nonconformity is and what's increasing that, and that's your office's call. But the general idea is, as long as you, for instance, what you couldn't do is have a relatively modest business or one-size business and have a non-conforming use, and then all of a sudden expand that to
3 or 4 more lots and expand the business. A lot of times how I'll explain it to people is if you have a lot line, just for like a residential property, if you've got a lot line and you're required to sit 5 foot off the lot line. In the future, you may be required to sit 8 foot off the lot line. But if your existing building is 5 foot off, you can continue that on. You can't get any closer, because then you're gonna increase your nonconformity. But you can continue along that same line. I would make the same claim that you could do with an enlargement, as long as you're not increasing, the actual degree of nonconformity.
We have a motion and a second to give the ordinance a second reading. Additional discussion.
Let's have another drink.
Olson, Bailey, Conrad, Brown, Lawson, Freeman, Gonzalez, and Davis voting yes. Item number 7, third reading of ordinance number 3031, ordinance amending the city of Faibury, ordinance number 2932 to establish water rates, to repeal conflicting ordinances and sections, and to provide for effective date thereof.
Motion to give ordinance number 3031 for reading.
Been moved and seconded that we give ordinance number 3031 the third reading. Discussion. Please cast your vote. Olson, Carmichael, Rogers, Friesen, Gonzalez, and Davis voting yes. Bailey, Brown voting no. Motion carried for the third reading. I now entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 3031. Been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance number 3031. Discussion? Please cast your vote. Olson, Carmichael, Brown, Rodney, Friesen, Gazalka, Davis, voting yes, Bailey voting no, motion carried. Item number 8, third reading to ordinance number 3032, an ordinance amending the city of Faibury's ordinance number 3945, regulating the drought emergency management supply to establish procedures for the restriction of water use in the event of a water shortage or limited supply, and to impose penalties for the non-compliance, to repeal conflicting ordinances and sections, and to provide for the effective date thereof. And move to second that we give ordinance number 3032 the third reading. Discussion. Please cast the vote. Olson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Rodney, Friesen, Gazalka, Davis, all voting yes. Motion carried. Now I would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 3032.
So moved.
And moved and seconded, we adopt ordinance number 3032. Please cast the vote. Olson, Bailey, Carmichael, Brown, Rodney, Friesen, Gazalka, Davis, voting yes. Motion carried. Item G, reports. City Administrator.
Yes, Your Honor, the city cleanup was in the last couple of weeks, and that was kind of interesting this year. We collected less, 113 or so tons were picked up, and about 130 tons last year. I think we picked up about 340, 350 tires, it was over 400 tires last year. I can't explain why the amount we picked up was down.
The tires weren't included in the tonnage.
Before it rained too much, Joe, people couldn't bring their stuff into town.
I do compliment the guys for the work they did. They worked really hard. They had one day that it was just raining on them all day, and they kept up. And generally speaking, they started 8 in the morning. They were done between 2 and 3. So they hopped. They got things done. And the city looks much better for it.
One of the biggest piles I saw in town disappeared before they got to it.
Well, there was a lot of good shopping out there. If you had a kid.
Well,
It wasn't even mine.
our recyclers were on the ball this year.
Yes.
You notice their recycle depot was just south of Union Bank,
That's what I thought.
which stirred a few phone calls. What on earth? Oh, don't worry, they're just saving the trip. It will disappear, and I would estimate that some of that tonnage that we're lacking, or that we didn't haul off, someone else hauled off and sold, which is great, because we didn't have to pay for it.
I actually found an old air conditioner of mine as I was looking for nuisances. I didn't take
Joe,
that.
you should be more careful where you put your stuff.
It was fun. It was a good effort.
Thank you. Mayor, I have no comment. Committees? I would entertain a motion on
So moved.